Hey there. So, you've looked at a mortgage, right? You know it's this massive debt, like a mountain you have to climb. But how do you actually conquer it? Well, the secret is in its amortization. Think of it as the repayment map that guides you all the way from your very first payment to your last. Let's take a look at what that map looks like.
So let's just get right to it and ask the big question. How do you really pay off a mortgage? I mean, it seems simple enough. You just make your monthly payments, right? Well, yeah, but it turns out the path you take can look very, very different depending on the kind of loan you actually have. So let's start by unpacking this idea of a repayment map. You can think of amortization as the GPS for your loan. It shows you exactly where your money is going and, just as important, how long it's going to take to reach that final destination, a zero balance. Okay, so what is amortization really? It's not just a timeline, it's a super detailed schedule. It breaks down for every single payment you make exactly how much of your cash is going toward the actual loan balance, that's the principal, and how much is going to the lender as their fee, that's the interest. Every payment you make is really a two-part punch. One part of it chips away at the money you actually borrowed, the principal. The other part is the interest, which is basically the price you pay for borrowing all that money. And here's the key. The mix between those two changes over the life of the loan. All right, let's see how this all works in the wild with the most common type of loan out there, the standard payoff plan. This is the road most homeowners are on. This is what's called a fully amortizing loan. The math is all set up from day one so that if you just make every single payment on time, your loan balance will hit exactly zero on the very last day of the term. No surprises, no giant lump sums waiting for you at the finish line. It's predictable.
And here's the beautiful part. With a fully amortizing loan, you are always making forward progress. Every check you write is shrinking your debt, bringing you one step closer to owning your home free and clear. This is what we call positive amortization, and it's a good thing.
And this chart shows it perfectly. Right at the beginning, year one, your balance is way up there. But by the halfway point, let's say year 15 on a 30-year loan, you've made a serious dent. And by the end, year 30, poof, that balance is completely gone. It's a steady, predictable march downward. But that's not the only map out there. Let's look at a different route, the partial payoff plan. This is where the trail can start to get a little tricky. So with a partially amortized loan, the big selling point is usually lower monthly payments. But those lower payments come with a catch. They aren't actually big enough to clear the whole loan by the end of the term. You're paying down some of the principal, sure, but not all of it. So what happens to what's left over? Well, all that remaining balance is due at once in something called a balloon payment. It's this massive single payment that you owe at the very end. You might see a real estate investor use this if they plan on selling the property long before that big payment ever comes due. Okay, let's push this idea even further. What if your payments didn't shrink your debt at all, at least for a while? This brings us to our next stop, paying interest only. A non-amortized loan or an interest-only loan does exactly what it sounds like. For a set amount of time, your monthly payments are just covering the interest. You're basically paying rent on the money you borrowed. Your actual loan balance, it isn't going down by a single dime. You're just treading water. And the result is pretty stark. Just like that other loan, you're staring down a balloon payment. But this time, since you've made zero progress on the principal, that final payment is for the entire original loan amount. All of it, at once. So far, we've seen loans where your debt goes down slowly, or maybe not at all. But what if I told you there's a type of loan where your debt can actually go up? Yeah, this is where you have to be really, really careful. Believe it or not, some loans are structured so that your required monthly payment is actually less than the interest that piles up that month. Think about that. You're not even covering the cost of borrowing, never mind paying down the actual debt. So what do you think happens in that situation? If your payment doesn't even cover the monthly interest fee, where does that unpaid interest go? It gets tacked right back onto your loan balance. This is called negative amortization. The interest you didn't pay gets capitalized, which is just a fancy way of saying it gets added to your original loan. So now you're paying interest on your interest, and your debt just grows. And this is the truly wild part about negative amortization. You can make your payments on time every single month and still owe more money than you did when you started. Your debt is actively getting bigger, not smaller. Okay, that was a lot, I know.
Let's pull everything back together and compare these different repayment paths side by side. Because choosing your path is one of the most important financial decisions you can make. So this table breaks it all down. With a fully amortizing loan, you pay down principal every month, and your balance hits zero. Simple. With a partially amortized loan, you pay some principal, but you're left with a big balloon payment. A non-amortized, or interest-only loan means you pay no principal for a while and face a balloon for the full amount. And finally, with negative amortization, your debt actually increases, leaving you with an even bigger balance than you started with. So what's the big takeaway here? It's that a mortgage payment is not just a mortgage payment. How that money gets used, in other words, how your loan amortizes, defines your entire financial journey. You absolutely have to know which path you're on. So I'll just leave you with this question. When you look at your own loan, is its amortization schedule a clear path to the summit of homeownership? Or is there a hidden cliff, like a balloon payment or growing debt, waiting for you at the end of the trail? Understanding your repayment map is the only way to know for sure.